Hey everyone, it's Richard Middlefin here, bringing you guys an old school album review. And today we're going to be talking about this album's 15th anniversary, and it's from one of my favorite bands, or mostly in the whole black metal, dual symphonic black metal genre. And as you can see from the title, we're going to be talking about In Sorte Diaboli by Dimmu Borgir, the band's 8th album released on April 24th, 2007 through Nuclear Blast Records. Now, this follows up their previous album, Death Cult Armageddon from 2003, and after 4 years between that, Dimmu kind of like decided to try something new with this, and compared to Death Cult Armageddon, In Sorte Diaboli is a concept album, and the story behind this, it takes place in medieval Europe, and there's a priest assistant finding out that Christianity is not the right thing for him, and he's kind of awakening. He finds out that he has more power and more ability than he thought, and the priest is kind of like leaning to the darker side, and it's very medieval wars, if you want to say so. And this album, right, compared to that, I feel like they decided to keep it simple, like no orchestras or overuse of the keyboards or ultra epic moments, and I feel like in some cases this is good for them. And I feel like Dimmu is not like a black metal band anymore from like previous like their earlier stuff like For All Tid and stuff like that. One thing to note is like the production. Like a lot of black metal bands would have like that kind of like raw production, like you recorded it with like a potato and shit. But they definitely have it a lot polished. Like they really wanted to showcase like where the band, everything where it needs to be. And one thing to note, let's just talk about like the individual performance from all the members that were on this album. One thing to note is the vocal work from Shagrath. Now, a lot of people say that his vocals have always been criticized, and some people were saying that he sounds now like Danny Filth from Cradle Filth, which I totally disagree. And I feel like his voice on here is a lot more powerful than clearer than ever. I feel like this was probably Dimmu at their peak with In Sorte Diaboli, and he also uses some kind of like weird effect, which is very interesting. And then the clean vocals from ICS Vortex, their former bassist, and I feel like he is in my opinion, the shining member on this album or in the band in general. And I feel like his voice is just so pure, and his vocal melodies are really well built, and his intonation is really perfect. And the bass playing on here is a little bit audible, but I wish it was turned up a little bit. And the guitar work on this album is really tight. Silenos and Gallagher's riffs are really solid, and most of the riffs on here are very thrash sounding. In fact, the guitar work is really good, and there's a lot of like, not a whole lot of clean guitar work, but I feel like it's just really good. Another shining member on this album is, of course, former keyboardist Mustis. And since they're not using like really like orchestras anymore, I feel like Mustis has a lot to do, and especially some of his shining moments is like on the Serpentine Offering and Sinister Awakening. And then we get to the drum work from Hellhammer. Now he does a great performance on here, and of course you obviously know him from Mayhem and Arcturus, and his grooves and intense fast drumming are really impressive, especially his fast double bass speed that he does is just insane, and he pretty much had a lot of shoes to fill after Nick Barker. So yeah, I pretty much rambled on for almost 4 minutes, so without further ado, let's dive into this album track by track. Now, starting things off is the Serpentine Offering. Now, this pretty much defines the new sound of Dimmu Borgir. Has a very epic, classical kind of introduction, which leads the song itself that kicks into a smooth and very rhythmic kind of oriented way. Just from like the orchestra backing in, and then, from the keyboards to like the fast drumming, and then the sick vocals are really here. And I also love the melodic and clean vocals in this song, and I feel like the band doesn't forget to include a catchy guitar riff in this song, and I feel like the band was right to choose this as the first single from this album, and it makes it a great and very detailed way to, especially with the music video for this, which underlines sort of like the concept that I had mentioned just a few moments ago. And then we get to the next song, which is called The Chosen Legacy. Now, this pretty much works kind of similar to the Serpentine Offering, has a very spine-tingling atmosphere with steamrolling with like blistering riffage and just some awesome fast double bass that just shoved down your throat, and it just feels like a sledgehammer is just being drilled right into your head. Next song on the album is called The Conspiracy Unfolds. Now, this pretty much has an ambient, choir sounding arrangement, laying the foundation for a quick, heavy groove and thrashy riffing. But the drumming, in my opinion, is like the highlight of this song, as Hellhammer lays down some pounding blast beats and deliver a great performance all throughout. And this version, I have, but before we get to Sacrilegious Scorn, this I have the European version of this album, and the one song I want to talk about is the Ancestral Fever. Now, the Ancestral Fever is a pretty good song. I mean, it doesn't like take away from what we've heard so far, but I just think it's just so good, really, so far. Then we move on to probably the Sacrilegious Scorn. Now, this is probably really my favorite song on Sorte, Diaboli, and believe it or not, this was actually the very first Dimmu Borgir song I heard back in 2008 or so when I was like 14, and I'm 28 now. So I honestly, I wasn't into like black metal when I was like 14. It wasn't until after high school, a few years after, that I just started listening to it more. And now it's became one of my favorite subgenres, and now I'm in love with it. But anyway, going into the song, The Sacrilegious Scorn. Now, I just love the string intro. It's very atmospheric, and Shagrath's vocals are really good in this song. And the song's brutality matches what they used to once do. And the piano solo, especially near the halfway through, adds a lot of like more to the song's evil atmosphere, and the string riff, it makes it very elegant. And the great addition would be Vortex's vocal part, although it's pretty short. All in all, this is a song that will not disappoint the average Dimmu Borgir fan. Next song is called The Fallen Angel. Not Fallen Angels, The Fallen Arises. I can't even speak today, guys. I'm sorry. Now, this is a very short instrumental. It pretty much creates a whole atmosphere that old Dimmu used to have, kind of similar to like on something from like For All Tid. And it has a very menacing war horns in the intro, haunting strings in the middle, and the ending choir and the drumming. I feel like this produces an eargasm to those seeking instrumentals, which adds atmosphere to a heavy album. And I think it's a really, really good song. Then it goes into the next song, which is called The Sinister Awakening, which catapults the listener into a blistering, rapid-fire guitar drum interplay. And I love how the band sort of like sprinkles a nice piano solo with the outro for good measure, though. And I just like how the outro sort of like blends into the next song, which is called The Fundamental Alienation. And it just flows really perfectly. That's just one thing I love about this album. It's like every song just goes really well with each other. I mean, it sounds a little bit different, but it doesn't like break away from the whole flow and the whole structure of everything. Then we move on to the next song, which is called The Invaluable Darkness. Now, this is pretty much described as like Ancestral Fever, as its counterbalances a blistering, fast guitar picking with a memorable sing-along, clean backing vocal refrain, especially at the end of the song. And then we close things out with The Foreshadowing Furnace. Now, this song pretty much has a lot of changes from like the doomy kind of metal parts to the high-speed passages, which pretty much gives a good future for the next couple albums. But I feel like this would, in my opinion, would be another highlight from this album. Now, overall, In Sorte Diaboli by Dimmu Borgir is a classic. And in my opinion, in her unpopular opinion, I should say, this is probably my favorite Dimmu Borgir album. And I feel like after this, they kind of went, not total shit, but it's hard to describe. But I feel like after this, of course, they fired ICS Vortex and Mustis, which I believe was a damn shame. I feel like they really fucked up, because I think ICS Vortex's voice is just really great. But anyway, if I were to give the album a score, I'm going to give In Sorte Diaboli by Dimmu Borgir a perfect 10 out of 10. So yeah, that's my review of In Sorte Diaboli by Dimmu Borgir, guys. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the album, and I'll see you all in the next video. And as always, keep it metal.